So this is a metapragmatic model. The features of the model are metasemantic and metasyntactic, going along with the subsets of metapragmatic propositions. And we're trying to get a sense of the limits of meaning, metasemantic, and and meaning and structure in metasyntactic, so that we can get a picture of this framework that we're operating within society. So this model would be a representation of the limits of our understanding for anybody who understands things the way that we understand things. Okay, so now that we have this model, we can go on and try and talk about an ethical sort of point of view. So if we've covered metaphysics so far and we've covered epistemology, like epistemology to say that I am a meta-epistemic behaviorist, and metaphysics to say that these are the different sorts of things, these different layers, and there's an ambiguous feature to the world, like in existential or pragmatic terms. We've covered metaphysics, we've covered epistemology. Now it's time to move on to ethics and say, okay, well, if this does in fact represent, our situation or the limits of the meanings and structures that we can become acquainted with within our cultures, what does this mean to us? What kind of implications does it have on our behavior? Okay, so here's how this ethical viewpoint kind of pans out. Okay, in high school, when we're being taught by our parents, the concepts that we're introduced to, like if you're looking at this model as being these 4 layers thick, when we're going through our education in high school, we're starting at the bottom levels of math, right at the bottom here, right at the very bottom, and we bring it up through at the end of high school. We pretty much have all 4 not the technology layer, but these other 2 layers or 3 layers covered up to the limit of the technology layer. And then we have a little bit higher, like under the engineering layer, we have a little bit of math and science developing. And then you leave high school and you decide what you're going to do for an occupation. Let's say that you make a decision like that. Okay, so most people make decisions like that based on one of 2 different things. One, they either like a metasemantic viewpoint. They say, okay, I'm going to be a tradesman, or I'm going to be an engineer, or somebody who looks at processes, or I'm going to be a scientist. Well, Johnny, what kind of scientist do you want to be? Well, I don't really care, I just want to be a scientist. So those are people that are making that decision based on the different metasemantic viewpoints. Now, the other viewpoint or the other reason people justify decisions like this is maybe that they really like a particular field. Okay, so little Sally wants to work in the medical field. Well, what do you want to do in the medical field? Well, maybe I'll be a nurse, maybe I'll be a doctor, maybe I'll be a scientist, maybe I'll be a mathematician, maybe I'll be a philosopher of medicine, who knows? But medical is where it's at, So let's say, okay, so that's what happens. So you go off to school and you start learning about this profession that you're going to take on. So let's say that you wanted to be a lawyer. Well, law is a particular field. Okay, we're just going to use this one here again. This is now the field of law. Okay, now a lawyer, we say that lawyers practice law, but in that sense, law is just a body of language. But they're policemen and other people that look at the field of law from a practical point of view, like security guards or even in the sense of the military or something like this. That would be more defense than law, though. But anyway, lawyers actually look at the field of law from the engineering viewpoint, the process viewpoint. They, and well, within the field of law, we have people looking at it from the technological viewpoint, engineering viewpoint, computational viewpoint. These are researchers, again, people who are researching past cases for precedents. And anyway, okay, so we're just going to say that where this field, okay, the limit of the engineering viewpoint layer, okay, is right here. And this is that field. Okay, so now to be a lawyer, you need to become familiar with an area of knowledge, something like this, okay? Now, and you want to have a good breadth on that limit, right? Like get good coverage right on the limit of law as it's being practiced today. But you're going to have quite a bit that, is going to be back like that. Okay, so basically, people develop really dense in their profession, and then a little bit lighter around the edges, because they deal with people in fields that are very close. Like, there's a lot of different laws to specialize in: family law, corporate law, international law. There's all these different other fields that, might be very close, but not exactly the same angle. So you're going to become acquainted with that, and you're going to know a little bit about the research going on in your field. You're going to know a little bit about the practices going on in your field. So we get this general sort of pattern for development that looks something like this. Okay, so if we graph that development with respect to time, so this is time. We're just going to call this your value within the system, because each one of these dots represents a concept that you understand, and we're going to call that your value. The fact that you understand concepts, language, you can communicate and be a part of our social fabric. Okay, so you develop pretty much linearly, we'll say, until you hit some sort of level where you get qualification. So at this level, little Sally wrote the bar exam or whatever, and she gets qualification. Now, the general trend for people is to level off. Now, this represents the things that you have to know otherwise, like maybe, well, let's say you have a child. Well, that's going to force you to learn a lot more too about raising kids and a whole bunch of stuff you haven't dealt with before. But the point is, we just kind of taper off, and all of these sorts of values represent things like running your new dishwasher and driving your new car with a bazillion gazmos and gadgets in it, and widgets. Okay, so each one of all of these values, it doesn't matter if you just have a little bit of learning or if you had kids and whatever, decided to learn a whole bunch more here. All of these values are in the techniques layer, the technology layer. So, but they're just operating technology around your house or whatever. They're not like learning a whole skill set dedicated to that one sort of thing. So they're all over the place. Okay, so now some people get bored and they either say, okay, well, I love this medical field. I love being a doctor, but now I'm going to go on and become a researcher because I'm really interested in that. So we'll say it's the same field here. Now you're attacking this other limit up here in the same field, okay? And that represents just a continuation on the same kind of trend as before. You're just constantly learning and learning and learning. And that's the same for somebody who says, okay, well, I'm an electrical engineer, I'm bored with the electrical side of things, or it might be very advantageous for me to become involved in the mechanical side of things given my current position. I'm going to learn another engineering discipline. So instead of changing layers but keeping in the same field, we're going to keep in the same layer